Thanks for joining me on griffstopitch.com and Exit Philosophy. Welcome to Griff's bonus wrap of the Red Sox versus Blue Jays series at Rogers Center. Jays now head out on a 7-game road trip to Minnesota and Tampa Bay. This follows a 2-1 series win capped by Wednesday's 8-1 victory over Boston and rookie manager Chad Tracy. It's amazing how giddy a team can get after they've won 3 straight series and 7 of the past 10 games as the Jays have gone heading into Minnesota. But that's the current Blue Jays, who are hoping that their April, mostly early showers lead to blooming May flowers. The Jays activated George Springer prior to Wednesday's series finale and had welcomed back rookie Trey Savage on Tuesday with 5 1/3 shutout innings. The Red Sox had fired Alex Cora as manager after a big win in Baltimore on Saturday, so though timing seemed a little strange, and replaced him with their own AAA skipper Chad Tracy, who had been with the Worcester Red Sox. In fact, they fired most of Cora's coaching staff, making one wonder how the new manager would relate to being on his own. Usually there's a leftover bench coach, or the bench coach is promoted, but this is an all-new staff other than the pitching group that was left behind. But clearly the GM wanted his own people there. He had inherited Alex Cora, and despite Cora's World Series win early on and his reputation as being a very good major league manager, he was let go. The situation of opponent turnovers is always dangerous for a team like the Jays. You don't want to be facing that team coming in with a new manager. Sometimes it's not a given that you're going to dominate early. I mean, sometimes a team takes inspiration by a change like that. So we would have to see when they came in. He had already won the Sunday game, Tracy had, coming to Rogers Center. And so it would be an interesting test for the Blue Jays. But the Jays had an unequal and opposite reaction. Had already been, they were a half game ahead of the Red Sox, but their reaction had been to reward GM Ross Atkins and manager John Schneider. So completely opposite. And we'll see how that turned out. In game 1 of the series, Sox lefty Ranger Suarez dominated the Jays bats, allowing 1 hit through 8 innings in a 5-0 victory for the Sox. The next day in game 2, the Jays leaned on the return of Savage, who worked 5 1/3 shutout innings after not really being dominant in his rehab outings. But when you get to the major leagues and you're in the Rogers Center, 41,000 plus people, the adrenaline really flows. And we saw that last September and in the playoffs with Savage. And even though he's still considered a rookie, he's got that experience and seemed inspired when he was out there. So that looks good. Joining Kevin Gausman and Dylan Cease, that gives them a solid top 3. And there's more cavalry on the way, even though Max Scherzer had to go on the IL. After Savage came the new look, high leverage bullpen, with Fluharty getting the final 2 outs in the 6th. Jeff Hoffman, the 7th, looked very comfortable in that role. Tyler Rogers, the 8th, and Louis Varland closed his fourth game of the year, all since the decision was made to move Jeff Hoffman back. And I wouldn't pass the hat for Hoffman. He's accepting the role of leverage, but not in the 9th inning. And the guy is making $11 million this year and next year. So he doesn't have to worry about his earnings potential until next year. And we'll see if he rebounds or if he just stays in that role for the duration of his contract, because it's going to be tough to knock Louis Varland out the way he looks like he's taking to the closer role. So that was a series tied 1-1 going into Wednesday's laugher. It turned into a laugher, and that promotes the giddiness on the field and in the booth, in the Sportsnet booth, where it was like a giant weight lifted off their shoulders, where they don't have to offer excuses for everything that happens on the field. They won 8-1 and are now 3-4 in laughers, which is defined as games with 5 or more run differential. The Jays at 3-4 have a -12 in laughers. So all laughers are not created equal. All blowouts are not created equal. And so we'll see how it goes. The bullpen looks solid, probably more solid than at any time a year ago. And like we said, the top 3 in the rotation, the top 2 are going to be healthy. We'll just see how the health of the support staff, including Savage, comes along. On Wednesday, it was Eric Lauer, who has sort of bounced back and forth, unhappily, but bounced back and forth, versus Brian Bayo. And Lauer started the game, and he doesn't like being the bulk guy after an opener. So he had nothing to whine about this time. He gave up a first inning blast to Wilson Contreras, and all the way through his 4 1/3 innings was being hit hard. But run prevention is what a healthy Jays team is built for. And they supported him, and they got enough runs to make it comfortable using the secondary bullpen, which is a sign of a good team, because now going into Minnesota, their leverage guys are all rested and ready to go. This was a tough day for the rookie skipper, Chad Tracy, in many ways. Before the game had even started, they put starter Garrett Crochet on the IL. And when the new field boss went to the mound to remove Bayo in the 5th, his disgruntled starter shook his head violently and wouldn't even look at his manager. He continued his tantrum in the dugout and all the way through that inning. If you're Max Scherzer headed to Cooperstown, that's one thing, when he snarled at John Schneider in the playoffs last year. But Bayo is not Mad Max and has not earned that right. That Bayo snit deserves some sort of discipline. It will be important that they handle it, and it'll be interesting to see how Tracy handles his first crisis. It got even worse for the Red Sox when the first batter his new reliever faced in the 5th after taking Bayo out. Ernie Clement hit a 2-run homer to left, and that opened up the game and made it comfortable for the first time in a while for the Blue Jays. Fundamentally, the Red Sox were also not good, with the bases loaded in the Sox for the Sox and IKF on third. Yeah, IKF landed with the Red Sox. So bases loaded, 1 out, IKF on third. I was wondering whether he was reliving his Game 7 moment where he was thrown out by an eyelash at home plate, and the Dodgers went on to win the World Series. But that was momentary because it was someone else who made a mistake. In this case, it was Chad Durbin at second base, was doubled off on a line drive right in front of him to Andres Jimenez, who flipped it to Ernie Clement for the inning-ending double play. So the Red Sox got to clean up a lot of things, attitude and fundamentals. In the game, Vlad had 3 hits and a walk. Brandon Valenzuela snapped a 1-for-26 combined skid for Jays catchers with 2 hits, a walk, one of the hits being a long home run to center field late. He might be putting in a bid because he throws a lot better. He looks comfortable behind the plate as a 24-year-old rookie. And he may be putting in a bid for either equal playing time or a little more than Tyler Heineman, whose main offensive contributions have been sacrifice bunts in the last week. In addition to Cora being let go, remember the Phillies also replaced their skipper, Canadian Rob Thompson. In fact, Dave Dombrowski had talked to Alex Cora about would he take the job this year, but Cora is being paid by the Red Sox and said he wants to stay home with his family, which doesn't preclude him from being hired by the Phillies next season, since Don Mattingly is just listed as an interim manager for the Phillies. But a lot was made by the media about Thompson being allowed to speak to the media on his way out the door. He requested it. Dombrowski granted it. And it was considered classy on the part of Rob Thompson to want to be able to do that, which reminded me of the same GM, Dave Dombrowski, when I was PR in Montreal, and Buck Rogers was fired. And the date of that was 1991, June 3rd, 1991. And Dombrowski called me at home in the morning. He was replacing Buck Rogers with Tom Reynolds. Dombrowski called me at home in the morning. We were traveling to Houston for a road trip, beginning a road trip. Good time to hire or to fire a manager. And I said, is Buck going to speak to the media? Because we had to call him at home and tell him he was being let go. And Dombrowski didn't respond. He didn't think he needed to. So I called Buck at home, and I was taking the flight also. It was a 1:00 flight in the afternoon, or 2 maybe. And I said, Buck, do you want to speak to the media? And he said, yes, I do. Because media were his friends. He was one of the most gracious, media-friendly managers that I've ever dealt with. And I've dealt with 19 of them. And so we couldn't do it at Olympic Stadium. So I called on Bishop Street, his favorite restaurant called Grumpy's. It's now closed. But I told him what we wanted to do and that the manager had to close down the restaurant to the public for lunch. And it was usually a very busy lunch place. So I called all the media. I got them to come down, and because Buck wanted to talk to them. Larry Bernarth, the pitching coach, good friend of Buck's, came. And the entire bar, the entire restaurant was just media and certain Expos personnel. And it was time to go. So I came from St. Catherine Street down the street. I thought it was just going to be a nice, comfortable little get together. And there's satellite trucks all over Bishop Street, and they're lining up. They're trying to get in. They're trying to get in the pub. They can't get in. And so I sort of coordinated all that. We had something with Buck. It wasn't like he wasn't ripping anybody. He just wanted to see the media one last time before he flew to California. And so we get on the plane. I left my American Express card with Larry Bernarth. He was going to stay till the latest moment he could and then come to the airport, come to Dorval. And he came with my card. He snarled at Dave Dombrowski as he passed him on the way into the plane. And when we were in the air, Dombrowski came and asked me, he said, Rich, do you think we should have allowed Buck to talk to the media? And I was in a quandary. I didn't know whether to tell him I already did. So finally I said, yeah. Well, I thought that it was a good idea. So I called him and we set it up at Grumpy's. And he went, oh. And he looked, he wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what he thought. He wasn't sure what he thought. But we got to the hotel in Houston. I got in my room, turned on the TV, and there I was on SportsCenter directing traffic with satellite dishes on Bishop Street. And I went, oh my God, I'm glad I told Dombrowski, because otherwise I was in deep shit. And so it turned out all right. He thought it was a good idea. Buck didn't criticize. But I would say for most of the managers that I've dealt with that have been fired in season, it has been a case where they don't have a chance to talk to media. So it just reminded me when Rob Thompson, a nice Canadian guy, was being praised for the way that he handled it. And so it reminded me of the Buck Rogers story, and I thought I should tell the story because I know it keeps me amused. But anyway, that's the story for the Jays and the Red Sox series. They're heading on Thursday. They have no off day, so they play 4 in Minneapolis and then 3 in Tampa Bay, back at the Trop. So I don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing. But such is life, and the Jays feel that they're bouncing back. They're getting healthy, and we'll see how it goes. Mal and I will be talking to you early next week, but thanks for listening. Don't forget to share this with your friends, subscribe, like, and we appreciate all of you. And we'll talk to you on Monday or Tuesday next week.